It is 6:30 p.m. All right. Any comments from the public not for items not on the agenda? There's no one from the public here.
Nobody online either.
Moving to the minutes for December 6th. We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the minutes? Changes that need to be made? See anything?
I would make an addition that the tax rate increase that we're talking about, number 6, is around school taxes. It's not overall taxes, it's school taxes. That might be somewhat important
In the minutes.
in the minutes. It says here in number 6, page 3. Commissioner Cummins spoke about the Essex Junction senior luncheon. Residents are concerned about the tax rate increase. It's actually a potential school tax rate increase statewide.
Well, there's both. I mean,
There's that too, but it was about school tax.
Specifically, you were talking about that.
okay. Is that amendments that you think should be made to the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
For clarification.
Do you have to redo your motion to approve?
No.
Oh, we
No.
haven't voted yet.
We haven't
Oh,
voted
We
yet.
just opened it up for discussion, yeah.
Discussion.
Anything else? All right. So voting to approve the minutes of December 6th with the additions of clarifying the tax rate increase that Diane mentioned. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes to approve the minutes.
Phil, we do have one attendee online now.
Oh, okay.
And one person as well.
Yeah, we can move back now that we have members of the public. If there's any comments from the public on items not on the agenda. Any online? Okay. We can move forward to the business items then. The land development code for signs.
All right. So, as we talked about last time, the land development code's sign regulations have to be amended to be content neutral. And there was discussion last month about how we would go about doing that, whether or not we would tweak the existing rules to try to fix it, or just start over fresh from something that we know works. It sounded like the consensus was to go with start with Burlington's sign regulations, which we know have been amended for to be content neutral. So Jennifer has gone through the existing land development code and replaced, made a version with track changes on, replaced the existing sign regulations with the closest proxy of what Burlington's sign regulations are like. Of course, with some adaptation because the rest of our land development code works a little bit differently. But to a certain extent, this is a technical exercise, but there are, there are real trade-offs to be looked at as well. So I think maybe the way to do this is I can go over the items for discussion that I'd put on the memorandum. These are what we thought were the issues that were worth discussing, or at least like really understanding a bit more. Okay, so you will see the first item here we have is 714J sign lighting. The way Burlington's regulations are a little bit different from Essex Junction's old regulations. And part of this was because we also had basically holiday lights and kind of seasonal lighting and string lighting put like within the sign regulations part of the LDC. To me, that didn't really make sense. So in the draft, we have put those back into the lighting section. But we pretty much retained it. We took out language about Christmas. Just this is a government regulation. We thought it should be neutral in terms of what holidays are celebrated. There was something about illumination of building facades and landscaping that we put back into we put the string lighting part of it into there instead of having that regulated by signs. Any questions about that?
I'm reading through the amended sign regulations. My neighbor actively uses string of lights to light his back porch. Okay, all year round.
Mm-hmm.
So by this regulation, he would not be able to do that. Technically. Okay.
Right.
Okay, technically. So, and I know a lot of businesses who use string lights if they have outside eating, because it's a very effective and efficient way of having lighting for an outside dining area. I won't exactly do it today, but when it's a little warmer, like 30. So I'm wondering, yes, the light, I agree with the holiday lightings and such going until January 15th. I can understand that. But I'm wondering if we need to be a little more flexible in doing that. Especially when it talks about that they want the lighting down by January 15th. And right now we're pretty darn lucky that we don't have like how many feet of snow and ice and whatever on our roofs. We try to take something down while things are encumbered by the elements. It may not be. So I think, do we really want to say have them down by the 15th? Or we want to say we don't want them lit after the 15th, then have people take them down as they can. Because, I think our regulations are such that we don't want the lights lighting up somebody's sign. I think that was the point in having the lighting in the signs, but I can see the logic of having it divided, and not having it in signs, but I think that was the purpose, was not to have lights to draw attention to signs any more than already.
So that sounds like there are two issues over there. There's a holiday lighting and requiring them to not be lit after the 15th versus being taken down. I have no problem with adjusting that. I think functionally, as long as they're not on, it's
Well, I
Right.
think that's the idea is
Yeah.
not to have them on. Okay.
Well,
But given that we have today, of course, you could take,
yeah, no, I'm just reading the general standards under the lighting section 704, and I just
Right.
wonder if that exception, thinking about your neighbor, and certainly people do this all the time. The way it reads, I feel like that would be allowed in somebody's backyard because it's not visible, potentially not visible at the property line. It's
yeah.
used for the purpose of illumination and not for advertising purposes. And then the portion as it relates to holiday lighting is specific as it relates to intermittent lighting. So I just wonder if it's already kind of in there.
So I'm walking down the street and I look in his backyard, believe me, I can see his lights. Because they're lit, it's very nice to see the lights. But, so would I have him not have them? No, I don't think I would not. I don't think they're, but that's my subjective opinion, that's not what the regs, so I'm looking at the regs and saying, okay, it's, I gotta get to that page. Here. Where are you, 704?
In the
So-
package, it's no, page 50
Page,
that was sent.
page 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say that I think in terms of string lighting and whether or not the LDC is like already has already allows it in some cases. Yeah, maybe it does, but I think there's a point that I think Diane is a point that string lighting is sometimes useful, like for restaurants, for even in places where you can see it from the public right of way. Yeah, and that is something that can be adjusted if we think there's value in allowing flexibility for that, as long as we're careful of what you don't want to happen.
Well, and that's why I'm bringing it up. It's kind of like to have that discussion. So, I mean, the other part is that we have dark sky compliant rules,
Yeah, string lights are not.
and they are anything but.
Right.
So, so they would be out of compliance just from the get go.
Mhm.
Well, I'm kind of curious now too, because we have lights in the front now, holiday lights, obviously, and they're gonna come down soon. But we also have lights in the back porch, which my wife wanted to keep up permanently. Now, if you can see the lights in the front, obviously from the property line, but you can also see the lights in the back from the property line if you look over the fence in the back, which is easy to do from the apartment complex back of us. So, I mean, which is the inconsistency there a bit? Because you can still see them from the property line. It's just which property line are we talking about?
Propose a devil's advocate kind of
No,
argument.
Please, because I was thinking of one too. Yeah.
The purpose of what this is here is that if, as I see it, one purpose of it is that if some private residence lighting became too abrasive to somebody, they would have the means to ask them to take it down. If it doesn't bother you, you're not going to call City Hall and say, hey, these need to be taken down. If their City Hall's driving around, they're not necessarily going to be enforcing this, but it provides them a rule of thumb to say, if it does become abrasive, that here are the reasons why, and it needs to be taken down. If we relax it too much, then anybody and everybody can put up whatever light they want. Next thing you know, we're lighting up all of Vermont with our little city of Essex Junction, and there's nothing to stop anybody from doing it.
I don't have any objection to be more strict as opposed to lenient, because I would like to have my whole street lit up in the yard. And so I don't mind that. It's just, I'm looking for the consistency here. But the way you've explained it makes sense, which is basically, it's, I wouldn't call it subjective, but it's at the discretion of people who feel it's a nuisance.
And then it would give them a mode to which to say it needs to be taken down for these reasons. Otherwise, it stays up indefinitely and just causes a nuisance.
So, point of question here. So if somebody reported it, then would somebody from your office or somebody else go out and say, yes, it's a nuisance, please turn it off?
Yes.
To the property owner?
Yes.
Is that the way it goes?
That is the way it goes.
All right.
And I think one way to think of it about this is that it could be different between commercial premises and residential. It's not such a big deal if someone complains and we tell someone to turn off their string lights in their backyard. But if it's a business with outdoor dining, I guess they could always submit it as a part of their lighting plan. But you know, if they didn't do that, and it's just some small business trying to innovate and do something that's cool, but someone doesn't like it, we are bound to have to tell them to
Right.
take it down.
Unless the TA or the guidance provided to the business is you have X number of days to submit a lighting plan
Right,
for review.
right.
That would include the string lights for approval.
And I guess if string lights are not allowed because they're not dark sky compliant and whatnot, if there's no exception for that in the LDC, even if they submitted that as a part of their lighting plan, we'd have to say no. So I do like
Yeah.
I think Diane has a point here in that it could be problematic. In a sense, it is the way we've drafted it right now is like we haven't it kind of follows the principle of it hasn't been a problem that has really popped up, so we aren't rocking the boat.
Right. No, and it is a valid a good point. I'm just trying to think to what point, like if you start to relax and make them too lenient and remove things, how far could somebody potentially go?
Which is,
Which is why I wanted to
asked
just
that
pose
question
it. Yeah.
and say, okay, it's, not that I subjectively would disallow it.
Right.
But the other hand is that if it was a business also, we could say that as part of their business plan, okay, that the lights go on to the time of end of close. Okay, at the end of the day, the light has to go off.
Yeah.
So if you close the business at 9, the lights have to go off at 9.
Right. A commercial private split make in some way could
Yeah.
make sense.
It would
Certainly.
make sense,
Yeah.
but, you guys haven't had the privilege of having someone talk about the overlit skating rink in the backyard, where the light was indeed going everywhere, okay? But you want that intensity, makes sense if you're skating, So I'm kind of looking, going to string lights and going, yeah, unfortunately, string lights didn't exist. And those would have been natural for that. But
To that point,
But-
though, thinking about the hockey rink, sorry to interrupt. Like, could you put a time limit on it, like we have with noise ordinances?
yeah,
A lighting or something to that effect.
right.
Where
it had
after a
to go
certain
off at a
hour,
certain time.
those lights in the backyard lighting the hockey rink can't be on past 10 p.m. Something.
Yeah, I mean, we could.
Actually, I guess string lights could be applied like
To that
that.
as well,
I-
yeah.
Right. I guess a time limit could be applied to string lights just altogether.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could try to put.
Interesting.
We could. So this is going to be a bit of an iterated process. I think where we'll make. I think the discussion that comes from today will inform any tweaks that we have to do. We'll also kind of go through again with a fine comb to check for technical inconsistencies the coming month or months.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that perhaps that what I just heard could be enough for staff to proceed with throwing something on the wall and seeing mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got the 100% answer, but at least we've got something to stew on.
Right. Okay.
Well, I didn't think it would be such a stimulating conversation.
I mean, who would-
But it's very interesting.
Sometimes, Scott, we can get there.
It's enlightening.
Okay. The next item I have on here in the memo is about awnings and canopy signs. Basically, the key difference here between Essex Junction's existing sign regulations and Burlington sign regulations is that Essex Junction's rules regulate all awnings, whether or not there's text and logos on it, versus Burlington sign regulations, which only regulate the awnings with symbols and logos. And then, like, separately, they regulate awnings in another section. Given that that's just not the way our LDC works right now, this draft just put the full awning regulation back into signs, even though it's like a little bit out of place. Any issues with that? Okay. Freestanding signs. So there are several things here, several points of difference. There's in Burlington's sign code, it goes, they differentiate between freestanding sign and freestanding yard sign. I think the reason why they did that was so that they could have different size regulations based on zoning district. As it stands right now, Essex Junction's regulations only has one category. So I think,
Do we have a regulation dealing with the freestanding yard sign? Because I was looking at this and going, I didn't go on to our online, what our current code is, to go and see if there was actually something other than there. I'm assuming that when you went through everything, you were giving us the whole section. So, and I'm seeing the freestanding yard sign. I'm assuming it's the one that says something like yard sale at my house, or something or other. That we don't. That isn't detailed here. Okay.
those are temporary signs. That's it.
Those are because they're temporary signs.
Yeah.
So, is it the assumption that in a residential area that there would be no freestanding sign?
So where specific types of signs are allowed, I think we will discuss that when we get to the chart, because I think that's the central to the way Burlington's sign regulations work is that chart that shows each type of sign and where it's allowed. Yeah, but basically, I think Jennifer points out just the differences in size regulations for this, and also there's a regulation about setback. It's not a very big difference, but by default, we're going with the draft went with Burlington's. So, yeah, any issues with that so far, and we will reserve the discussion about what types of signs are allowed where at the chart. Okay. There's also a point here about how there are existing sign regulations has a few extra caveats about freestanding signs. But we have not retained them. And there's something about how businesses with drive-through facilities may have like some extra signs, basically, and service stations, convenience stores for basically gas stations can have a few more. But yeah, for simplicity, we just went with completely with Burlington's on this front. Okay. The next item here is projecting signs. I think this one is kind of interesting in that projecting signs are defined a little bit differently in Burlington. They have something called a blade sign, which is something around this size. It's basically our projecting signs that we allowed, which is like this sticking out from the side of a building. They call blade signs. They basically allowed everywhere, but they also have projecting signs, which are big, kind of like architectural features.
Right, they have pictures of what they're saying are projecting signs, and I thought, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought those signs that are stuck in the ground, and they can be 10 to 12 feet tall, and they go whippity whip whip. Okay, are those not? They
No.
look like big feathers. Are
No,
those?
those are feather signs, and those are temporary signs. They're not projecting signs.
Okay, those
Projecting
are not
signs have to be
projecting
stuck on, they have to be mounted on the wall permanently.
Okay, so that's not blade sign. All right.
Like, yeah,
No, okay, I'm just, it's terminology is always a good thing. It's nice to have these pictures.
yeah, yeah, and that's something I think is neat about this. Yeah, going with Burlington's, we just have pictures. We might even be able to replace some of them with local examples.
Yeah, that
But-
was gonna be one of my suggestions, is that if we could actually find some examples of,
We don't have all of them, so
I know.
but we don't have all the types. So, but I mean, this thing with what they call projecting signs, they're currently basically not allowed over here. They're much larger. They're kind of architectural features. Imagine a theater that has a vertical giant sign that sticks out. Do we have? Are there? Do you have any thoughts on if it makes sense to just follow Burlington's route?
Well, okay, so I was reading, and I know, as you can see, I've taken some notes, that it appeared to me that the ostentatiousness that Burlington has is not reflected here in the Junction. Signs are closer to the building. It'll say 8 or 6 inches away from the building as opposed to 12 inches from the building for max. So I was reading through this and going, okay, so this is what, and I kind of got the feeling that there was more of a, it's like, here's my sign versus, here's my sign, okay, sort of a thing. So I mean, that's kind of like the context I was starting to get to feel as I was reading this and going, Essex Junction said, signs there, but I don't want you out there throwing it in my face. Whereas Burlington here with the Wilson Inn, yeah, okay, that definitely works on the second story, and when you're looking for something, looking around, going, where's the inn? Oh, there it is. Okay, and you can find that sign. Here, I think it's just a matter of how out there are you, and whereas the Nectar sign, which of course is on the building, as opposed to like the Wilson sign there being so.
So I think there's several there. If we wanted to stick with something that's close to what the current rules are, it would be just to say under these new definitions, no projecting signs at all. But yes, blade signs. Blade signs are projecting signs. I think there was some provision in there about projecting signs, needing more of like a design review.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, like, could you include some sort of exception? Like
think
what's
yeah.
there is like good, but then maybe some sort of like an exception can be made within the design review overlay, so that, because I think sometimes projecting signs are architecturally interesting,
Yeah.
and like maybe we don't want to like necessarily push design away. Maybe if an architect has a really cool design for a sign that's going to go, in the overlay district, we want to see that, I think, and have the ability to say, actually, that would be really cool to have.
So we could say though projecting signs have require DRB approval, basically. Yeah, under the design review. And I could. They would only be allowed in certain districts, probably the districts with the highest densities, and they're already in the design review
It's
overlay
already in
district.
design review, yeah.
And that makes sense that should be reviewed by the DRB. Okay.
Yeah. So then having them split and separate makes sense.
Okay.
Matching Burlington's differentiation within their.
Chris, can we just go back to the standing signs real quick?
Certainly.
So the idea is that we're going to go with the Burlington regulation.
Unless you have other thoughts.
I'm just wondering if there was if there is any, if it was looked into at all by staff on like what that might change, and I'm just thinking of like the fairgrounds, and like does that allow for a larger sign? Like, what are the changes that this makes? 60 square feet is big, right? That's,
Okay, we could look into that.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if like what that might change. Just it would be interesting to know the effects of that change.
What already
I
exists.
don't know what, I mean, I would think the fairgrounds
Is
sign
bigger.
is already that big.
Yeah, it might be.
I think it's
Yeah.
already that big because that, so that television screen there is
Mhm.
it's at least 6 feet by 4, so that's, and I would say the fairgrounds
Yeah, that's
is good.
Yeah, that's true.
Because remember, the sign includes the base, the whole thing. So do they have 3x of that? Yeah, they probably do. But I don't think it's out of line with where it is placed and how it's on the road.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if there was an idea of what might change. Because I would assume also, because yeah, you're right, 60 square feet is not that big. But also-
That's really 3x of what that is.
I assume the frontages in Burlington are probably on average less than here. And so there might be
Right.
some
So yeah,
properties that could go bigger with their sign.
right. Like let's say Post Office Square, or the larger properties. It is yeah. Okay, we can look into this. Do a little more analysis on freestanding signs and what just straight up adopting Burlington's might have on the larger properties.
Or even maybe just going out and seeing and figuring out
Yeah.
some of the larger signs that we have, like the 3 largest. What are those sizes, so we get an idea of.
Yeah. We actually have information on that on file
Oh, okay.
because they've had to submit permits, get permits to put up those
It's
signs.
like the former IBM sign there, but down there, that's up there.
Yeah. Big.
Okay.
I'm sure that that's more than 60 square feet.
So the next item here is just wall signs. So what's different over here? We have, there's some technical differences in size restrictions. We also have a point about how in the village center district, you can have an internally lit or neon window sign. That's an open sign, really. We try to address this under the window sign section of the draft amendments by allowing pretty much, like anywhere, like as a window sign, you can also have that open sign. I guess this might be worth discussion on whether or not that should be allowed everywhere, or only in the village center district, as functionally that's where it's allowed right now. Okay. Any comments or questions about that?
This is the wall sign now.
Wall signs, yeah.
Does this include painted wall signs?
Like a mural, or
Yeah.
there's actually there's a point further down about murals, and murals are allowed under Burlington's rules, and I think we had copied that over into the draft, and they defined murals in a very specific way. You can't have lights pointing at it and stuff like that.
Okay,
But the wall sign could also be a commercial advertisement.
Right, the wall sign could be, and that's why there's size.
A mural could also be a commercial one.
I think they made it so you could not, and for some reason they didn't think that was an issue with content neutrality. But presumably they've thought about it. We can also ask when we get to that part, let's we we should take a look at that. I think it was further down in the.
Well, I mean, one of the examples for Burlington was a UVM wall sign that was painted, looked like,
Yes, they use this as an example.
as an example, a picture of UVM's logo on a wall.
Right.
I mean, could you do that here, for example?
I mean, we had intended to, in this draft, just copy over the entire wall sign section. So presumably, yes. Do you have thoughts about whether that should be allowed?
No, I'm just asking. I mean, there are several buildings along Main Street, for
Mhm.
example, that have walls. I mean, obviously there are windows and stuff there as well. But on the other side of the street, there's a couple that, you know, you could affix, you could paint something on that wall. I'm just wondering if that would be allowed. And it's also coming back to some of the comments Elijah had about wall art or community art. So I'm just trying to get a sense of how this fit.
Well, so I mean, I can't tell you with certainty that whether or not, you know, without really reviewing it.
Yeah.
But I could use. I mean, it would be useful to have any feedback about whether or not you think it should be allowed, and what the considerations are.
But there aren't any buildings where you could actually do it.
Well, okay, the section where the UVM lion or
Yeah.
catamount and it's gonna be is on page, in our
14.
214 or in our documents 26. And it's talking about the calculation of sign area as opposed to,
But that one, is that one painted or is it affixed?
that one's painted on the brick.
Is it?
Yeah, that one's painted on the brick and they're using it as an example to calculate how much square footage it's taking. As opposed to, whereas when you get down to, gosh, where that page is, it's wall signs in the examples. It's more of like Phoenix books. Now, could we, here, but imagine, you know, something, you know, getting that sort of.
I mean, it does say on page, I think it's in our page 42 or 230 in the regulations. A wall sign may not be painted on walls made of previously unpainted stone or brick. So to me, that says a wall sign could be painted.
It could be. I mean, we have.
Yeah.
If it was designed that way, I guess.
It's not that right. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of brick buildings, we have a lot of brick buildings. But could there be places, you know,
But the question from Scott was that it was that if a wall sign could be a painted sign as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm reading that it could be a painted sign.
Okay. So is that okay? Any issues about that? Okay. All right. So.
Oh, wait, what's this? A wall sign may not be painted on walls, okay, previously unpainted stone or brick. Okay, so in other words, if it's wallboard or whatever.
Right. I think that sounds like it was designed to protect nice exposed brick basically and prevent that becoming a net.
Graffiti, yes.
So there's window signs. Yeah, basically if we adopt Burlington's, which is in the draft right now, it would be a minor, it would be an increase from 25% to 30%. And there's also the open sign allowance. Any thoughts on that?
Okay, so on page, the beginning there, it says something about signs inside buildings that can be 40% window. That's not in here on page 43. It's up. See my notes. I stopped going this by section. I went by how this was written. So, where are we?
can show
Exemptions.
it.
It's under exemptions. But it had something in there saying it was 40% total window, not 30%. That's down farther. I'm trying to reconcile here. Now, we have, okay, so the window signs they have, for example, are essentially like we've got, something painted in the window, like their birth at church. Okay. Now I know that we have a lot of window signs, which are supposed to be temporary, that become somewhat permanent. And that you literally have that full sheet of paper in that window. So if that full sheet of paper is in there for year-round basis, is that part of the signs? Because it'll say stuff about what's on sale or whatever is on the inside.
Or a menu.
Or a menu. So is window sign like whenever it says birth of church or window sign? And that's a window sign?
I think technically yes. If you put a piece of paper there and there's contents on it, that's a window sign. Unless it's in a separate case. I mean that's a technicality that could be reasoned to, let's say for a restaurant to and make sure it has a flexibility to put up just a menu without having to go through a whole different process of installing a box for that. That could be reason to go with 30% instead of the current 25. And that the default assumption right now is that we're going with 30, but I don't know if you have any issues with that.
Okay. Or we make the regulations such that if they want to go more, that they need to go, well, they'd have to go before the DRB. No, they'd have to go before the DRB because they would have had to go before zoning and pass for a sign. So if they want more, they would need to go before the DRB to do it.
How are you guys interpreting the quantity max? Out of curiosity. One per first or second floor window, indoor, ground floor entry?
No, I'm interpreting that as 30% of any window with a sign. Or if all windows have signs, it could be 30% of the total area.
Or if you have 10 windows, could you put 10 signs in one window? And that's
I think our interpretation under our rules has been yes. You can concentrate it all under
okay.
one window.
That's how I'm reading.
So in the instance where you have menus and these other signs, as long as they have the appropriate number of windows to account for the number of signs going in that singular entryway, they would be within.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm not reading it. Each window, if you're in your example of 10 windows, each window would have to have a sign to count towards the.
But I think you could also
because it says
make the argument the other way, that if you have 10 windows, I'm going to take 10 signs and put them in one, and I have one sign per first or second floor window. It doesn't necessarily say which window they have to go in.
but it says of all windows with signs.
Yeah.
But
Where's that?
The catch is,
I have it open right now.
it says window signs shall not interfere with the primary
I'm looking
function
at
of the
it.
window, which is then to enable passersby and public safety personnel to see through the window. So if they totally cover a window that it cannot be seen through, they would be out of compliance.
So they also couldn't do that.
So no, they
Right.
couldn't do that. They'd have to, if the parcel is such that
Yeah.
safety personnel or passerbys could see that there was activity inside the building.
But
Twice the-
But yeah, in your example though, Like if they had 10 windows, as long as, even if it was like a little sign in each window, they could have one window that they just filled up to like 50% or 60%, as long as safety personnel could still. That's how I read
Okay. Well, I guess the interpretation of how this is how this works is important, but I think even more important is whether or not you think this text that we have on here works. And like basically, like, is this okay, or do we need to tweak any of this?
Well, I would say that we could go with it, but I think we need to think about, a total covering of a window. Is that really technically allowed?
Okay, so I guess we can I can work with Jennifer to kind of think through
Okay.
scenarios that you want to, like potential problems that you're identifying here. So one potential problem that you don't want this policy to allow is a total coverage of one window, right?
So I don't think. So I was reading from the memo section that only had the third bullet point here.
Ah,
I didn't see the other ones. I don't think this would allow fully.
why not based on the miscellaneous now?
Okay, so we can make sure that this won't, and I think we're already there, but we can make sure that this won't allow for total coverage of a window.
There's one other situation where windows would be covered, which is if you have a cannabis retail store,
Oh yeah.
because they are required by law to have their windows covered.
Okay, we need to add basically
Exemptions.
an exemption. Must add exemption for basically anything that's covered by that's required by state statute.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have our CBD dealer, Wall Street, and it's got 75% of its window covered.
But I think you can cover it if you. Well, okay, no, there is a point here that says it cannot interfere with the primary function of the
Yeah.
window. I guess the signage part of it, the 30% thing, that doesn't really matter if it's just a blank covering, which is, I think we still, if there's a cannabis shop, you wouldn't want it to say cannabis, 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 cannabis everywhere. You'd rather it just be blank, right?
Which is what the situation in the Essex outlet.
Right.
And the purpose is you don't want people to be able to see inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we can make sure that's such an exemption is in there.
Covering,
It's a window covering.
does that matter in the nuance here? Or we just talked about signs?
Essentially makes a window a wall.
Right.
Well, but we can make sure that
Yeah, I know.
we're able to see
Against
that it's allowed.
Right. Just thinking about the language and the nuance.
I mean, there's one example I'm thinking of, is the windows literally are 75% of its covered. Okay, and this talks about having a sign behind the window. And I think, I'm recalling my drive here, they have a neon sign in the window with the covering behind it. So the covering's not on the window, it's probably 12 inches or whatever, behind the window that's covered, so you've got
Right, you can put a
this-
shelf there.
Yeah, shelf, whatever, okay, and so,
Right,
Yeah.
but I guess what I'm asking is, are we talking in this instance, the covering that they put behind it, or the neon sign can't be any bigger than what is in this regulation, not the covering that's behind it? And is that a nuance that we need to pay attention to?
So I think that's I think an exemption to make sure that you are allowed to cover a window in a way that it does not interfere with the primary function of the
Yeah.
window
Yeah.
is necessary somewhere in the LDC. It doesn't necessarily have to be here as long as it works, right? I do think this was written to focus on signage specifically.
Right.
And I think it's saying that the signage cannot interfere with the primary function of the window. There's probably, Burlington's thought through all of this, like, for years, right? And I'm pretty sure such an exemption to allow for, like, the cannabis stores to have blocked windows is somewhere, but it just might not be here. And we have to make sure that we allow it somewhere. So, I mean, we can go back and check and make sure.
Right, yeah, I mean, I'm interested to find out what happens around my corner. They're doing work on that.
A couple questions on this. The 8 inches, that's just the max height for lettering.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering if the neon aspect should not be regulated in the lighting section as well. Because I'm reading this like 20% of a window in neon is a lot. Like if you can have a neon sign, right?
Yeah.
Window signs shall not be illuminated. However, the use of neon as part of the sign design is permitted. And then you can have 20% of the area of any window be that sign. And if that's a neon sign, that seems like a lot.
But if the letter can only be 8 inches.
And
Lettering.
if you have a neon sign that says open,
Right.
isn't that a sign?
The
That's,
letter, but
That's a letter.
that's 4 letters, 8 inches.
Right,
They
but
can have a circle
but
around it.
neon doesn't have to be just lettering.
Right.
Neon can just be a design.
Well, is this trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist and it's not likely to exist, or
I've heard about issues about neon signs in this city before in previous meetings.
so
I'm just saying that it sounds like we're allowing for a light to be
Mhm.
put in that is 20% of a window,
Right.
and I want to make sure that's something we want to do,
Okay.
or if we want to move the lighted aspect of this to the light section as well.
lighted section to well, I mean, so what would you want it to say, basically? Like what functionally, what do you think the limit for the if someone has an open sign or any kind of neon sign, what should the limit be? Is it basically what we had before in the VC district? Because we could just put
To
that
be
in.
honest, I don't know what we had before regarding neon signs.
I-
I think an open sign is fine. I think most open signs are not 20% of the window size.
And yeah, generally, I think they are 8-inch letters.
Yeah.
Says that one.
I mean, you can make a
Oh, it
neon
actually-
sign that's just zigzag. That's just bringing attention to your
3
business.
square
It doesn't
feet.
have to say
3 square
anything.
feet.
So right, our existing regulations say 3 square feet. I mean, we could say the neon aspect of it cannot exceed 3 square feet. Just
Fine with that.
Yeah, if that's what we had. Yeah.
I'd be fine with bringing that into this. That's fine.
okay.
And just one other question though: Are we not? Do we address signs, window signs above the second floor at all?
I don't think it's allowed. Basically, that's under this regulation.
It's just so we're saying one per first or second floor window.
Well, I guess one per first or second, right?
So none.
So third floor above wouldn't be allowed.
Okay.
Second floor would still be allowed, I guess.
There's no signs allowed on top of rooms or above. So but yes, I suppose as we get buildings that go higher, but right now our business, unless somebody wants to put something on one of our residential buildings.
Right.
Like across the street.
I'm just wondering if we properly. It wasn't clear to me immediately that that we were saying you couldn't do it on the third or fourth or fifth, potential fifth floor.
Yeah, I think this line, the top line over here, pretty much
Just says that's it.
says that.
per
Yeah,
purpose.
that's the max quantity, maximum.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, that covers window signs. I think the next point here is about basically this table of what's allowed. Maybe it's easier. Let me see if it's
Well, Chris, can we go to, since I'm here in the examples section.
yeah.
For sandwich boards, we need to eliminate, it's on page 229, I guess,
What's the PDF page?
41.
Okay.
When you get to the final piece here, it says, Public Myra approved by the Department of Public Works or the Church Street Marketplace Commission.
Oh yeah, we can fix that.
May as well get that eliminated. I don't have a problem with the Department of Public Works being consulted, but Church Street, I don't think it's really going to care about, downtown Essex.
That was clearly a mistake.
Oh no, it's
an
a copy and
oversight.
paste, I understand.
Yeah.
But we're in the process of.
Okay, so this would be yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So, gonna try to pull up that the table of the land use table. Although I'm gonna stop sharing because this is being very slow with that.
So
and I'll
where-
put up the clean version.
Where are we going?
I'll throw this up in a second. Let's see. Sorry. So yeah, I'm trying to put up the table that tells you where each type of sign is allowed, like based on zoning district.
This is 714M1.
714M1.
Okay, so the one thing I did notice, and the comment I have, is the tables, the consistency of the color of sign types permitted or not permitted between the three charts are not consistent. It's one clear is permitted, another one clear is not permitted. So when you want M1, clear is not permitted, and then you get to the next one, it says clear is permitted. So if we can tweak that such that same colors are the same thing. In other words, it's not either permitted or not permitted, and they're identical. So that you're not going, oh, wait a minute, I just saw that, and there it's red. No, I want to go for clear.
I'm having trouble pulling this up right now, so it's hard for me to
Yeah, it's page 44, 45, and 46 in the PDF. And yeah, what Diane is saying is that the red dots,
The red dot.
when it's the sign type
Oh, yes,
combinations,
yes.
the dark red dots are where it's permitted. But then where it's where it's
Yeah,
allowed in the
it's-
district,
it got, yeah.
it's
changed
it's
on-
switched. And
Right.
personally, I would say to use the dark red dots as where it's permitted, because
Right.
that seems to me like you've checked it. Or that
Yeah, same.
you've said
Yep,
this
here.
is here.
yeah, I got it. So yeah,
Just kind of go for consistency. So
Completely
think about
makes
that.
sense. Just read on, like, why would that not be permitted in that district? Like, what type of sign? Am I misunderstanding the type of sign it is?
okay. Hopefully you all have this open. Do you have any? So like we had to basically take a guess on because Burlington's zoning districts are obviously different. We had to use some logic and come up with something that approximates what we think the intent of the regulations was. Do you have any issues with what's in the draft in this regard?
Are you also trying to share a map? Are you trying to share a map, or could you share the map?
The
of
zoning map?
districts? Yeah,
I
can
was
put
not
it
trying
up
to
here, but-
show it, but I can. Yes.
it would just help. I can bring it up, but my first question was why we were excluding awning in the planned exposition district, excluding some signs: awning, band sign, blade sign, marquee, monument. And I'm just wondering, like, how I feel like if they're renovating the fairgrounds or updating some buildings, like the signs in there can be all different types, and I'm just curious what the
I'm not sure there was. I'm not sure there was a. Yeah, that was an intentional choice. I think Jennifer might have just. Been,
yeah, I would just say it seems like the more signs that can be
So more
allowed in the
flexibility,
planned
right?
yeah, more flexibility
In the
planned
planned expo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we-
No, I don't know how that affects
No, I don't want to.
the frontage signs. I'm thinking more of like the signs in
Well,
fairgrounds and on the
everything in
buildings.
the exposition, it's 100% of the plan is the exposition. The
Yeah,
entire works.
yeah.
So, so can I?
Wait, I have the zoning
There it goes.
pulled up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And then to piggyback on that, I would just say transit oriented development too. Like, why would we necessarily want to limit marquee signs? Like, it could be some kind of cool development. Maybe we put in a theater in Post Office Square, and a marquee would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the only consideration, I think marquee signs tend to be allowed in the densest areas. Let's say like the central business districts of of the larger cities, and then maybe like one step back. So it's like I think it doesn't have to be that way. And also, this is probably the next step back from the village center district would probably be the TOD district. So to me,
I just feel like
kinda
naturally
makes
that's where
sense.
we want the development and density. to
Right,
occur,
that's
for
right.
Transit, the TOD, and the village center.
yeah. Okay, so marquee signs. Any other?
I mean, it could also be the same thing where like an exception to this could be granted by the DRB, right? Could we also write that in?
Would that be a way to address it instead?
Okay, so basically all types of signs, or is it
No,
or just
specifically the marquees or the ones that we've said in the TOD marquee sign that are not permitted, that we could say that an exception could be made by the DRB or a waiver could be granted by the DRB. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like-
I don't. It,
okay?
I was
I was trying to
go
think
back
of like
to
what
like,
other kind of
Well, I mean, it's
businesses
like I'm
would have a marquee
looking at right
that
now,
would
and
potentially cause an issue.
the fair. I mean, the fair could put
Yeah.
in a marquee, right?
Yeah, they have
They yeah, I mean, they have, yeah. Not, I'm thinking more of like a theater marquee.
right.
Yeah, the Flynn Center, what comes to mind.
Yeah.
well, they could put a marquee above the sales office, sign where you buy your tickets. They could put
Yeah.
something there. In fact, that might actually be beneficial to people who don't like things. But I mean, a monument sign in the TOD, considering some of the developments we're talking about, they're probably going to have a monument sign unless they have a sign on the building.
Right.
So, do we want to obviously say no monument signs?
So wait, right now we are saying
Well, I'm looking at M2, and it says no monument signs in the TOD.
Yeah.
And I don't know what was approved by the DRB. I didn't go look to see what they were approved with the newest regs. Is the building going to have a sign on it? it's not a series of, or, it's not the TOD, I guess it's a highway district up there. Farther out, there's a series of 3 buildings that are coming down and one's going up. But are they going to have a sign out? I know that the current apartments buildings have monument signs in front of them. They don't have them on the building.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not sure what Jennifer's intention was with when she put that in, but I could imagine that monument signs tend to work better where there's a lot of space around it, and the TOD district is trying to encourage development that's much more compacted, would not have the space for monument signs. Having said that, it doesn't mean that we have to ban it, because right now clearly those are where it's a TOD district. It is still there's strip malls, and
There's
why not,
apartment-
right?
Apartment buildings with monument signs. I mean, so I'm kind of going, we would make them,
Remove them.
well, I won't make them remove them, but as they're driving by, because, as opposed to somebody's going and looking at the building, they're looking at the highway. So,
We could change that if there's no problem with.
so it's, do we want to make things non-compliant? Because that's what we would be doing,
Right.
making more buildings non-compliant. I'm not sure how many of them we have. Is it worth?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see a point here, and I think it makes sense to just change that, just to flip that and say that monument signs in the TOD district are allowed. I would say there actually aren't that many monument signs out there. The ones that exist are at the malls, one of the malls.
Yeah.
Marquees are allowed phones.
But
Oh, well, I think there's one like 197.
So people are
197, I think that's a freestanding sign. I think,
Okay.
yeah, there's like, the difference between a freestanding sign and a monument sign is, not very huge, other than the fact that it's like, there's no gap. There's not like posts and then a gap for a monument sign. But I mean, I see no issue with just allowing that to provide the flexibility if
I
nobody
think
else
we
does.
Okay, so some of the residential areas, we actually have monument signs. They have, this is countryside, this is whatever. There are actually monument signs up there. When the developments went in, they did put in, I'm not sure what's from countryside, but I know that there's one up the hill. And what that one is called. There might be a sign up there. I'd be hesitant to make them non-compliant just because.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we could just flip that. It's no problem, I think. Okay. Yeah, any other use table issues or considerations? And of course, we will be doing another kind of look through it with like a fine comb in the upcoming months.
So in that general area, there's up on it'd be page 43 or 231. What do I have here? It says mixing multiple sign types A, and then so then you have them down to multiple signs on facades and sign types below. So my question is the A needed? Could it just be multiple signs and then here's multiple mixing, colon and just go with it? Unless you wanted to make 2 a B and just not need the number 1. Just this is this. I guess it's an editing of as to how that reads. I mean, the outline's a little kludgy.
Are you talking about so are you saying you think that the whole sign type combination table is
No, the table's fine.
Okay.
This is the paragraph that precedes it.
Ah,
I don't know. I think they say two different things.
Okay,
I think the 1A there is telling you that you can have multiple signs, but they have to be compliant with the table. And number 2 is telling you that if you do have multiple signs, they have to be consistent with the overall architectural of the building and employed in complementary manner, materials, colors, design.
yes. I mean,
Yeah.
the letter, yes. Okay, but I'm wondering, since it has mixing multiple sign types, colon, why do we just have A? Do we just go mixing and just eliminate the A, get rid of the letter A, and just go mixing multiple signs?
oh, yeah. That seems like it would simplify it a little bit and just not have 2 levels for no reason.
Right,
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Yep.
okay. Now, that's need to be there for the meaning of things, but this is a editing letter, grammatical editing.
Multiple. Okay. That's, yep, easy tweak. All right. Any other comments about the sign types and districts, or are we good to move on?
I think we're good.
Okay, let me just make sure we covered everything here. Okay, so last point is that there's our existing LDC also has some things about subdivision, multifamily, and school entrance signs. Because those schools are allowed in every district, and also like you can't have like freestanding, like, you know, large freestanding sign in front of just a single family house, but maybe the whole subdivision can be one. That's what we had an allowance for before. I didn't see any reason to take that out, so we intentionally retained that under section 714 N, O, and P. Oh yeah, there's something about maintenance of signs saying I can't allow them to become dilapidated, and you cannot unlawfully cut trees and shrubs to increase visibility to your sign. Didn't see any issues with that, so we kept it. And you know, these things, like, even though we didn't see it in Burlington sign regulations, it could just be a part of like another part of the regulations. So yeah, they probably somehow covered this as well. Okay, so that takes us to the next steps. We will go through and edit the draft based on the discussion today and bring this back. We'll also look through for technical inconsistencies and conflicts. And yeah, we'll bring it back for the February Planning Commission meeting. And these, you know, we'll have other topics to cover at that point. Perhaps you know, if we're ready to bring forward electric vehicle charging, we might bring something up for that. But we are actually pretty busy right now.
Chris, can I bring up some things about the maps that you included at the end?
Yes,
Okay, so,
Is that part of the next conversation?
that might be the
is that
next
part of the next
conversation.
conversation?
Yes,
The
that's
expanded NDA.
actually about the NDA expansion.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought it was part of the LDC.
Um,
Oh, wait,
I figure we're right there.
okay, I guess that's all I have to say about the sign regulations. I think we've received
Great.
direction from you.
Great.
okay.
Okay. So yeah, moving on to the business item B, updated boundary for the NDA.
Okay, so this is not the first time. This is probably like the fourth time we've been able to talk about this topic, but we are just about ready to submit an application for the expansion of the neighborhood development area. It needs council approval, but Regina thought that it would be good for you for the planning commission to make an official motion to recommend this. But we've actually, let me throw this on the screen. This has also changed a little bit based on some recent work we've done. So previously we had talked about how there were several choices in how you could expand, right? There's a 1/4 mile buffer, which you could just do a straight 1/4 mile buffer out from the village center, and that's easy. Like they would almost certainly say yes to that. You could ask for extending beyond that if there was strong reason why that was necessary, and we thought that it was Pearl Street corridor for sure, but also the rest of the design review overlay district seems to make sense, because our policy is that we want to allow and concentrate the growth in that area. So we tried to take a hybrid of that. And of course, if the neighborhood development area expansion is granted by the state, it doesn't mean that people have to make any changes. It just means that they may be able to access some more resources if they want to. Previously, though, we had a previous version of this had the proposed boundary go out, this way. So, can you see this cursor? Yeah, you can. The previous version had it go out this way a little bit as well, just to get the 1/4 mile buffer. But Regina looked at it and was like, and said, and thought that could be contentious. It might make it sound like we're trying to densify an area that is the rest of policy is not trying to do. And I thought it would be a compromise to say the rail line is a cutoff. It's a natural, it's a natural barrier for walkability anyway. So that was kind of the compromise over here. We kind of go with a 1/4 mile buffer, but we really concentrate along the design review overlay district, and we get, it didn't really make any sense to cut these people out of the benefits if they were ready to densify, individual landowners, and up here as well, where there's an established small lot residential neighborhood. That's basically how we came up with this boundary. Are there any comments
Okay,
or
so
concerns about it?
for that district in the legend, the black line and the dark blue line should be noted as to what they are, the boundaries for.
Right. We could add that into. I think in the actual draft application, it's made more clear, but I exported this in a way that doesn't have all the information. But we can make sure that is obvious. But I will explain right now. The black line, the area with the black boundary is the proposed expanded neighborhood development area. The blue outlined area is the current neighborhood development area and the village center designated area. Okay.
So, question I have, map 11 is in the legend on the side there. I'm not sure what's going on with the gobbledygook with structures, infrastructure with, help me. Okay, on my sheet here, it is,
So which
map
one's
11 is page probably 55 or 56. Kind of straddles. on here.
The flood hazard.
Oh, flood hazard. Okay.
Flood hazard areas. And the top of the legend is
Here it is.
corrupted.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yes. Might be just a PDF export issue. We can fix that. So like, all we did over here was put the proposed boundary over our official plan maps. That was the requirements of the application process, and you just have to show if the expanded area is going into any vulnerable areas.
Yeah. That's what I was-
Well, that was my only, kind of going, okay, people are looking at this and I'm here and going, what in the world was that? Map 2, is it possible, this map is going to proceed to go, is it possible for that pink shading, orange shading, to become lighter so that it doesn't interfere with the historic district colors?
We
So
can
that you can
cer-
actually see them. I can see them a little bit better on the wall, but it's difficult on my left groups to actually see the historic.
that is good feedback. We can certainly make that change.
And I believe it's similar on map 6. Okay, with the coloration makes it hard to see what's going on in the business district. And I know that there's a sidewalk on Hillcrest, which is not noted. Or I'm having a difficult time of seeing what's noted on Hillcrest. There is definitely green on Summit Street, but I'm not sure what's going on Hillcrest. And we just put in a brand new sidewalk.
Oh yeah, well, was that after 2019?
I'm not sure, it might have been about that time.
We could certainly annotate this map if I don't think we'd be changing the map because we're saying that it comes from straight from the official plan, but we can look into that just to make sure if it's not on the map we can annotate it.
Because it's definitely a full-blown sidewalk that goes all the way up to Prospect Street across Hill Street.
So, sorry, what was street again? That
Hillcrest.
Hillcrest.
I mean, there's something, it looks like something's on there, but I'm having a tough time with this map. See,
Yeah, we'll take a look at the full resolution version, and tone down. I think we'll tone down
how
the
turn down the color so
red.
that we could see what's.
Thank you.
Same thing, the shading thing also happens in map. This says City of Essex Junction zoning.
Yep. Well, this one is a little bit necessary because it's the zoning map is a chloropleth map already, and then we're trying to put another.
Well, we got,
I guess we could just use the black outline as the main. We can make it work. We can make this work clear.
because I was having a tough time seeing, what is this? It's, Earl Street. Oh, what color are you? It's green, looks like it's green and white, maybe. I see, I'm having a tough time seeing what it is. It's across from the fairgrounds.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm having a tough time seeing what color that is. So if the shade could just get toned down or something for the neighborhood, so we can actually see what the colors are.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that. I think we'd probably just make the black outline thicker so that that's the focus. Okay.
But I know that with our upcoming study, it will be important to know what's the HA district and what's the TOD district.
Right. Okay. So in terms of we'll make these technical changes to the maps. In terms of the proposed boundary over here, if you support this, we could use a motion to forward this to basically to approve this for
I'll make a motion to approve the boundary as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approving the boundary as presented?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
All right. Cool. We will move forward with that and keep you updated as we move on.
Yeah. Nice work on it, Chris. Good, a lot of good thought process went into it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. Business item C, selection of consultants for the TOD study.
Okay. I have a few background slides over here. I think they may be helpful because there's a little bit of confusion about what this project is, what these consultants are doing, whether or not they are working on multiple things with the CCRPC and whatnot. But I'll let you know what I know, and also we can talk about what the scope is for sure and what it might be. But yeah, this is a transit-oriented development plan project. And there are 4 phases of this. The first phase of this is a real estate market demand evaluation, specific to for the region and also specific to Essex Junction. The second phase is the part that I think the Planning Commission would be most involved, and I think this is probably the most consequential for the city. Is master planning and municipal zoning updates. So this may, but it doesn't. It may or may not end up being a form-based code, and we'll talk a little bit more about what a form-based code is in a sec. But the goal is to update our municipal zoning to enable and encourage dense walkable development in the most transit-friendly places. And however we'll get there, it will be explored through this project. And some topics that might be explored outside of just a form-based code discussion might include an official map for a future conceptual street grid through the currently large lots, let's say where the strip malls are, what it would look like to completely redesign that with a street grid, something like what you see at Taft Corners. There's currently, very large parking lots there, but the plan and the official plan of the city includes a map of where the street grid would be. So that might be, a part of this, and form-based code is just one potential thing that might help us get there as well. Third part is a transit ridership forecast, and then the fourth part is an evaluation of ways to finance this type of development and for transit operations. So obviously, the intention is to really combine land use and transportation planning over here, and make sure that land use is each optimizes for the other. So, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the importance of this and the areas where it's most important. In terms of public transit, for public transit users, frequency is freedom, and I think that is something that unless you are a user of public transit, it might not be so obvious, because frequency is not something that you experience with most other modes of travel. Walking, driving or riding a bicycle. You go when you want to go. But the closest thing I could think of is probably, you can imagine if there's a gate at the end of your driveway that only opens once every hour. That's a kind of experience that public transit users have, and really the way to make transit more effective and attractive is not really to make transit go faster, but to focus on making this gate open more often. So if we look at frequency of transit service, existing transit service in the Chittenden County area, this is a map that shows what we have coded by frequency. So red means a service that at noon runs every 20 minutes or better. It says 21 minutes. That's just how I categorized it. Blue is basically, it means 30 minutes. And then there's there's the lower frequency services of this teal color. That's basically 40 to 60 minutes, and then beige is over 60 minutes. So you can see like Route 11 over here. Actually, no, I think it's Route 10, the one that goes in a clockwise circle and also goes down to Taft Corners. It exists, but it's barely there. It's not nearly as powerful as what we have over here. That runs every 20 minutes. And this 20-minute service is the most powerful service that exists in all of Vermont. It's so yeah, it's something we should value and something that makes sense to make use of. So of course, the transit-oriented development study, at least last parts of it, will look at how to expand frequent transit as well. It will look at potential rail corridors, perhaps, and how to fund that. But I think the important thing to note is that frequency is important regardless of mode, whether it's a bus or a train. And for attracting high ridership, frequency is even more important than mode. A train that runs every half an hour is not going to outcompete a bus that runs every 15 minutes. And the other thing is that frequency is expensive, so we have to put it where it's the most effective. And we have to kind of we have to think about where it's possible to put high frequency transit. So when we think about increasing density in certain areas of the city, we are targeting places where it is possible and where it would be cost effective. So when you're looking at, or when GMT is looking at where to propose high frequency transit, they would putting it where it's most effective. It would be these four factors over here. There's density, putting it where there are lots of houses, lots of residents, because with this example above, it's the same transit service, but you get twice the ridership as what's down here, just twice the number of residents around. You'd focus service where there's good walkability, because you can see with these two examples over here to the left, the one at the top, traditional street grid, within a quarter-mile walk, you can reach almost the entire radius. Down over here in a more suburban kind of disjointed street grid, you can only reach a small portion of that. We have areas in the city that are like the top and areas that are like the bottom. And the last thing over here is that it's you got to consider where it's possible to cross the street, and if we can make it possible for people to get across the street. Because if you want two-way service, you need sidewalks on both sides and crosswalks. And I can think of one area where that's a real issue. Pearl Street's west of West Street, between West Street Extension and Susie Wilson Road, has transit service going west, but no transit service going east, because the buses fly by with the doors closed because there's no sidewalk and there's no crosswalks over there. And lastly, and also it's basically linearity is another thing that's required for transit to work well. I think architects often forget this. They think they understand about all the talk about density and walkability, but linearity is specific to transit. If all your destinations are arranged along a straight line, transit is much more cost effective and is faster for everybody. But down here, if you have to torture your bus route to reach every destination, it's slower for everyone. Also, distance is time and time is money for transit. I can think of several situations that are already like this. The fact that at the UVM hospital, the main entrance is back off in the center of campus instead of near Pearl Street. The fact that in South Burlington, the bus has to do a pretzel shape because the high density development is kind of a little to the south of Williston Road, and that this is something that I think we have to think about when we're dealing with a transit-oriented development here as well. And proximity, shorter distances, just being like you can do more runs within the same. You can serve more people with the same bus when things are close together. And I think, yeah, the fact that we have some gaps between our destinations means that there's opportunities to kind of fill in what's in the middle and increase the density there. So, what did other municipalities do in the past, and what might this look like? So this example is what Winooski did about 10 years ago. They went through a form-based code process, and that is something that might end up happening here. But I think the first image over here is just of their public process, their charrettes, their design sessions, where they tried to get community members to sit together and decide what mattered most, what they could imagine the main corridors becoming in the future. And regardless of whether or not we end up with a form-based code, I think whatever consultant comes in will have to do something like this to get people on board, and to make sure the end product is something that people believe. But Winooski took this and they turned it into more refined sketches like this. And then they redesigned their zoning so that along these three corridors, these three kind of fingers going out, they replaced traditional regular zoning with form-based code. So this is their form-based code map. This is a regulating map of a form-based code, and you can see that it's a lot more detailed in terms of where the lines are of what you can build up to. They've got a parking setback on here that is specified. We have something, I guess, similar in our zoning districts, but it's not quite as clearly laid out. They have kind of a neighborhood. They call it a neighborhood manners setback. It's kind of a protection zone to kind of soften the transition between the high density and the existing neighborhoods. And within the streets, you can see like each block is a little bit different in terms of what they want the uses, the allowed use and form to be. This is when we zoom in. This is kind of what it looks like. And you don't have to read through this, but I'm just showing you an example of how detailed form-based code can get. This page is talking about how you can have a building that's, that looks like this, but it's got to be split into different sections with different window placements so that it looks like a more traditional, smaller building, a set of buildings that are beside each other. We've got specific guidelines on how you would have setbacks from the lower density residential districts and how that transitions. More detailed kind of drawings and illustrations of how vertically what things are supposed to look like. And yeah, so that's what form-based code could look like if we were to go that way. But I think the important thing in terms of selecting the vendor here, the consultant here, is not necessarily the fact that an expectation that we would go towards form-based code, but really the community conversation part of it and making sure that there's a good visioning process that gets many people on board, and that process, and making sure that process is something that people will lean on for years afterwards, instead of going back and opposing what was kind of agreed on at that point. So yeah, what do we have to do here? I think today is a good time to discuss what's this short list looks like, and also if it's necessary, we can set up interviews with a couple or all of them if you want. I guess any questions about the intents of this project, the purpose of this project?
I had questions.
Yeah.
I'm still a little bit confused about what you said in the beginning. They got a grant, they got a raised grant, the RPC, and basically it's for the regional study. The money they got is broken down to counties and municipalities that are participating, and those are listed at the end of this grant proposal. Or no, they're listed at the end of the RFP. But what I don't get is exactly what we get out of this compared to the other cities or municipalities. And that was also completely not clear in the RFQ because there's a discussion of the first year FY24 plan, which has 2 task orders, which I call task orders, attached. But it doesn't mention anything about Essex Junction. So my question to you, Chris, the other day was, are these consultants that will be on call for all of the municipalities, or are these our consultants?
So the consultant that we choose would be our consultant, but they may also, they may also be working for other municipalities and other aspects of this project as well. You'll see so the raised grant is more specific than the RFQ that the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission sends out, because they were looking for land use planning and development regulation consulting services altogether for the raised grant TOD project and other projects. So they've come up with a short list, and I think they have they will end up assigning the available consultants certain ways, but they've recommended 3 potential consultants, and these are the 3 kind of shortlisted consultants that would be assigned to work specifically with Essex Junction on our land use issues and like visioning for our transit corridors and how zoning would change here.
So we would basically, based on which consultant we choose, you and your staff would have to come up with a task order, scope of work,
Right.
for them to implement.
I am not sure how much how much customization we have available. Basically, I don't know if CCRPC has like kind of a standard task order that they want for all of these all the participating municipalities. I think there's a certain amount of rigidity in the raised grant application that has to be achieved in every participating municipality. But we do get, I think we pick one consultant, and that consultant spends a lot of time with us. We're not going to work with multiple consultants on this.
No, I'm just trying to get a sense of how this is going to be actually implemented.
Right.
So my assumption is that there's maybe a generic scope of work
Right.
that the RPC has developed, which includes the market analysis, form-based code, the whatever it was, the transit study, those 4 things you had, Rich.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that scope of work would be implemented by those consultants, this consultant, for us.
Right.
Okay. It was just a little bit confusing,
Yeah.
especially when they threw these things in here on East and West Charlotte, the new North End. I was really kind of confused.
Right. Because in their RFQ includes projects outside of this raised grant TOD project.
Okay, all right.
Makes that timeline in one of those make a little bit more sense.
Right.
Selection process and stuff.
All right,
Well, it's
now I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me just, I aggregated the scores together, but I would preface this by saying that the scores might not matter so much because there were, I kind of messed it up. And also, I think it's really, it's more important to just, talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each one. But let me throw up what I do have. Share screen. And I'll point out what was potentially problematic here. It said, so demonstration of overall, first of all, like my scoring system here and the maximum total scores was not the same as what the CCRPC had for their I guess their RFQ. That's the other thing. It says RFP over here. There is no there's no proposal in any of these responses. These are their qualifications.
yeah.
So yeah, they don't really tell you exactly how they plan to proceed, and I think that's going to be up for for more discussion. The other point over here that I kind of messed up was it said I think it said 20 points up here, but 30 points in the example,
Right.
and I meant 30 so that it all adds up. But I also figure if you understood it to be 20, you equally that bias equally fell to each of these candidates. Yeah, and that's it. But the scores that as they were added up kind of put tool design at the top. But not by very far. And Framework and Jeffrey Farrell Associates were very close, 1 point off. And then I think there were a lot of comments about each one. And I think that's really what we should be focusing on here. Because I guess any questions or discussion about the aggregate points, or should we just, we've looked at it, I guess it's fine, right? Okay.
So, and to clarify my confusion, so if we pick one of these consultants, for example, Tool has the largest number or the highest score right now. If we pick Tool, are we guaranteed we're going to get Tool, or is each other city, municipality going to be rating these same three consultants? And they're going to aggregate the scores.
I am not sure. I am not sure. Like CCRPC is asking which is our preferred one.
Okay.
Uh,
But they may be asking the same of Winooski and Burlington and everybody else.
yeah. There might be some kind of balancing of workload that they might have to do. But I don't think. I think we should just assume. We should just come up with a clear priority list. What we get is what we get. So yeah, there were a bunch of comments about each one. Maybe it's actually I had a few comments as well, and Regina had a few comments to share, but maybe we'll keep the staff comments to the end. I think that might make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, Philip, how do you? Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
there are
so-
different ways you could do this.
Your explanation, I mean, that's makes. I mean, I'd honestly be happy with any one of them, but if I had to choose, I think I lent towards Framework and Tool. I mean, my scoring was off by 5 points between those two. And what I liked about both of those is that I think the responses spoke a lot to placemaking. That I thought Farrell didn't jump out at me in terms of placemaking, which is really taking what we have within our community and making it ours, making us unique, and kind of making that our selling point. The thing about Farrell and tool that I thought was interesting is that they've worked, I think it was Farrell that did Taft and Winooski.
Yep.
And Tool is currently working with VTrans to do a statewide transit study or something to that effect, which I thought would be extremely useful knowledge to bring in, but it's good to know that they'll be part of CCRPC's package anyway. That'll be, be bringing that knowledge into the whole process. And then in thinking of that and with Farrell and the idea of placemaking, I thought it might be better to go with maybe the lesser known entity and framework, in that I thought it was unique that the individual had some close ties to Essex Junction, who might be motivated to really bring something very unique out and in terms of their work product. But to not work with Farrell, because despite the idea of continuity between the three communities of Williston, Essex Junction, and Winooski, I don't want people to get lost in the sense of, as you're driving through, which community am I in? When they pull into Essex Junction, I want it to be unique. I want it to be placemaking. I want it to be different than the way those other twos were designed. And I think bringing in a different consultant other than Farrell would bring a slightly different elements to that design and a slightly different approach and uniqueness that you wouldn't necessarily get from somebody who's only worked in the other communities. So, in that sense, my two would be framework or tool. That's who I would prefer.
All right. I had a hard time the first time I read through it, and I had to read through it again. I thought they were all very general in their discussion. The second time through, I got a little bit more clarity. The one thing I didn't like about Framework and Farrell is they seem to be focused on one or two or three individuals. Framework had two people that they use in every single project, and they mention them in their write-ups. Steve, whatever his name was, Steve Cecile was the lead consultant. He's the lead person. The other person they have who's on the letter was the other person they were promoting. And Farrell, it seemed to be Farrell was the one-man shop, so to speak, or one-person shop. What I liked about Tool was they had a diverse group of people supporting the projects, and they also had an extremely good DEI approach. Not only just writing it up, but it's actually embedded in their whole training program. And I felt that they had a wider array of techniques. Farrell didn't mention visualization at all in terms of charretting. And they also didn't have a lot of recent projects. Taft's Corners was the most recent. And they said in their letter that they had a light workload so they could be adaptive, which to me means they don't have enough staff. So I was a little bit concerned about that. I would be happy with all three, but I think Tool and Framework would be my preferred choice over Farrell. Farrell was too much form-based stuff. He's the guru of form-based planning, and they didn't really talk up the other aspects of it. Their market analysis stuff was pretty slim. One of the others also didn't have much to say about market analysis. I think it was Framework. So that's why I went with Tool.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you both said so far. And my scores were really close too. So it was just like, yeah, I'd be happy with all three of them, but Tool was the highest that I scored. I think just based on their similar projects and the experience in Vermont, I think especially in this project, if they're going to be working with a lot of different communities, it seems like that experience in other projects in the state gives them a little bit of a leg up. But the same, like you both said, like between Framework or Tool, I would be happy with either one. I really like your point of like introducing a new frame of mind, a new perspective into it too, though. So Framework would be good there as well.
Well, I like Tool in that they definitely the depth of TOD. I think I know Mr. Aranga from his previous event, and his mother lives here still. And we, I shared with Chris, I think we might be, blaming the TOD district set up to Mr. Aranga, because he might indeed written that regulation when he was here.
Interesting.
Because it preceded my time here, and that when he was here, I think I was in between worlds and heard of him. So that's that piece. I like that both Framework and Farrell spoke and wrote their proposal and qualifications in a very comfortable manner. Whereas Tool seemed engineered. So I mean, I was kind of wondering, I don't know the people that they're using. Okay, they may have the personnel qualifications to interact with people, to get the best out of them. I don't know, but they did seem to have quite the breadth and depth, where the other two did not. So, but I thought that they all understood the RFP, and wrote well about that. So, having them chosen, I do agree with Scott that they seem to be heavily weighted on a couple people, when it comes to both Farrell and Framework. The one gentleman was spoken of, I think, at least 3 times in each one of their works. So, and he's a locally based contractor. So I guess that's, I would like this to have, Essex to have its own identity. I mean, we constantly hear about the big boxes along the road. And, that's become the Winooski model. And I think we have a choice of something else slightly different from that. That it's not a continuous strip on 15 to be big box buildings along the way. I won't share some of the ugly comments that I've gotten from the public on that, but you can extrapolate. So, but my question is which one do you think would interact with and get people out? I forget which one said they would do things by internet first. Well, okay, it's a good place to start. But given that our community really wants to have hands-on and be here, we need to get people here to do that shred. So how do we, which one of these 3 is going to be able to get people to come and participate in that shred? That's my big question. Because we really need that public input. And only 75% of our community, my numbers, have internet access. The rest of them do not. That gentleman there, came to visit. I'm not sure where he is, but I think he's born and bred in this area. That he's lived here all his life. And how do we get the full that we have help to participate in this?
Couple of comments on that. From my experience with the strategic planning initiative, the discussion during the selection process was local versus more remote. The scores indicated that we preferred the consultant from Minneapolis. There is some downside to that, which is you don't have somebody on site, essentially. And what I thought about Tool versus the other is the Tool project manager is based in Vermont. And I think that would be better for communication in a lot of ways. You might be able to get access, face-to-face access, as opposed to Zoom meetings. The other sort of lesson I'm learning is, and this was very clear from the consultant for the strategic plan, is they're not going to mobilize people. That's a responsibility of the city. falls on us. There's not enough money in the scope of work for them to do that, especially if they're coming from Washington or from Washington DC, or even from Boston where Tool is. It's hard for them to mobilize people. They can't do it. They don't have the budget for that generally. So the lesson that we're learning is that we need to be able to do that ourselves. And we don't have the framework for that right now. We don't have a communication outreach engagement framework that allows us to do that in easy fashion. So that's just something to keep in mind, that no matter who you choose, a lot of that organizing for the charrettes and stuff falls upon us as volunteers and city staff.
I can relay what Regina had in terms of comments. So she prefaces this by saying that without reading, having read the full proposals, here are her thoughts. Jeffrey Farrell is great, and he did Winooski and Williston's codes. I like the formats of his stuff. It doesn't have too many parts and pieces to fit together, so it's more simple than some of the other formats. He is an architect, which is also a helpful skill. Also, the first visioning step of these projects were highly helpful in getting to consensus on the ultimate zoning changes. And then about framework, Regina says, Jeff Arango's experience and history here in Essex Junction is probably a major plus. Seattle input could also be beneficial, though you also have Portland insights already. Like I have Portland insights. David White. So David White was the planning director in Burlington for decades, and therefore would bring great experience in being at a city where a form-based code was being developed. And then he clearly understands the local context. And she says that what I know of Tool is that they're more transportation planning focused, and they are excellent at it. However, I have that skill set, so maybe it's not as great of a need for us. So that's what Regina says.
Did you see David White wrote Burlington sign code?
I didn't actually.
Yeah, he wrote.
So you see what his work product looks like outside of form-based code. I mean, I think form-based code and the sign stuff actually kind of was maybe done nearly at the same time, because it was a part of the same consideration. My comments were that for framework, I saw that they had strong experience from larger cities, and also the smaller cities they worked with, had actually decent transit outcomes, and I think TOD, transit-oriented development in those cities that they worked with, was kind of serious transit-oriented development. Whereas I saw with Jeffrey Farrell Associates, it might just be because of where they've been working, but I don't see many examples of where their work product ended up with the robust transit outcomes. Even over here, you can see out of Winooski's form-based code, it mentions transit, but it's not optimized for transit. If it was optimized for transit, it would focus development going east along the Route 2 bus, which also links here. But they also have stuff going out the Mallets Bay Road, which will never have good transit because it doesn't have the density and linearity and continuity that's necessary. But yeah, I've seen some of their other examples in other states that they've worked with, where they've come up with TOD plans. Those are places where transit runs every hour. I mean, it's on paper, it's TOD. It might be very walkable, but in terms of designing for serious transit outcomes, their product is not going to come with that.
Sorry, that was Farrell.
That was, Farrell, yeah. And then tool design, I didn't really have much to say other than the fact that their team is pretty big, which it's just hard to tell who actually would be spending most time on the project. You know, the project manager probably who is local would likely be the one, but to spend the most time on this project. But the person with the most experience on specific topics that we might be interested in might not be, spending that much time there. So, I mean, I was kind of leaning towards framework, but yeah, I mean, to me, tool has other advantages as well. Those are my comments.
So to be clear on what we're doing, we're selecting our recommendation to CCRPC.
Yeah.
Who we'd like to work
Of who
with.
we like to work with.
Yeah.
And then they'll assign.
And if you want, if it's not clear from our discussions here, we could invite the candidates for an interview, but not necessary.
I mean,
I feel like if we're not the ones that are actually making the decision,
Yeah.
an interview doesn't really seem to make sense.
I think you're almost making the decision. I do think CCRPC is, they want the city to choose, and they've already kind of shortlisted who they think would work given the constraints.
I'm so confused. Because if these are our consultants only,
Mhm.
then I just don't get a sense that these are our consultants only. Is each city going to have a separate group of consultants?
No, so CCRPC put out the
Q.
the request for
Qualifications.
yeah, to work on their entire, as I understand it, the entire raise grant. And these are the three out of all of that. CCRPC has whittled it down and said we want to work with these three firms to work with all 12 of our municipalities. So who out of these three would you like to work with, Essex Junction? And all, am I misunderstanding that? I mean, I feel like all three are going to be part of this whole thing.
Oh, well, see, that makes sense to me. But that's not my understanding what I was doing. I thought if that's the case, if this is a roster of consulting firms that's available to RPC, and we're choosing one of the three, that makes sense.
I mean,
We are picking one of the
We're
three, yeah.
choosing the one that's gonna work with.
with us in our community.
All those three are gonna be working for our CCRPC and to work on the raise grant. Okay, we get access to one consultant to focus on what we would like to see happen as part of that raise.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me.
That's my take.
That's what
That's correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I got.
And there's 12 communities.
Well, something like that.
There were more than three. Like they shortlisted three that they recommended for us. But
No, in terms of community.
communities, yeah, there were.
There's about 8.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
eight,
but
yeah.
if all 12 are saying, I want to work with Tool, clearly that's not going to happen.
Right.
So we're not necessarily still making the actual.
We're going to essentially rank them and say, this
Yeah.
is the order in which we would like them
Yeah. So
assigned to
my
us.
suggestion was then, we should just send a ranking
Okay.
of
That's
of
fine.
them,
That's fine.
I guess. That's what I was trying to understand exactly what we were deciding.
Right, exactly. So if all 8 select school can't work with all 8.
Yeah.
So in some fashion, we're going to be assigned to somebody.
And, quite honestly, an interview's not going to give me any more information than I have already. So I don't think it's necessary. And actually, Regina's and your comments were helpful. Especially Regina's experience working with Farrell. So we're okay with the rankings?
So how? Yeah. So
Tool framework Farrell, that's where it ranked out.
I think Patrick has framework first.
Yeah, I went framework
Yeah.
Tool Farrell.
I mean, I'm looking at the
Yeah,
composites.
no,
the
I know.
composites.
I know, based on our aggregate scores,
Yeah.
but if I had to put my actual opinion forward, it would be to flip framework and tool. I mean, I do recognize that they're like a 1A, 1B situation, but flip framework tool. Fair.
Hey, you know,
Yeah,
but
right?
give him a chance to rework what he may have done.
I mean,
He's got, to me, it's kind of like, you know, yeah, some people like having the experience of saying, okay, so now 20 years later, all the stuff that I learned, okay, I've got to rework this little project. And he might have something to say for it. Okay, so which is kind of my point, you know, maybe, yeah.
That's our mandate. Come back and fix this.
Well, okay, okay, so how many
well, a lot
times?
changes in 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years ago, that
Well,
was a great project probably, but 20 years later, things.
Well, it was innovative to try to get this, but as we've had, you guys haven't been in my chair to say, okay, so we're trying to get you to do this, and this is the requirements of this district. And basically, they look at it and go, no, I want to do it my way. I have my architect with my drawing. This is how it's going to be. I don't care. And we're going, no, you need to alter your drawing because this is the standards of this district. And we got, well, people walk away because they were not willing to play with their drawing to meet our needs or our standards. So, you know, it's not everybody can take a farmland. In this case, we're not taking farmland and starting brand new, or we got something already there. You got to redo it.
Well, so by my count, it sounded like staff had framework as first.
I mean, I did. I wouldn't say Regina.
I think Regina did not.
Yeah.
Regina, it sounded like she was leaning towards Farrell.
I'm not sure she was leaning towards anything. I mean,
Yeah.
but she was,
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. They were just comments.
They were really comments. Yeah. I tried to squeeze a recommendation out of her and I couldn't.
Well, Scott, I know Scott and I have tool first, tool framework. Fair. Diane?
The questions being is which one do we think is really going to do Essex Junction quality job? I guess I could go with framework first. I mean, it's how much time are we going to get from these people? And, you know, are they good? You know, having a depth of people, how many of them are actually going to come here and evaluate what we've got going?
The other thing is, again, based on my experience with the strategic planning process, is Seattle's a long ways away. You're not going to get a lot of trips.
No, but
Boston is drivable.
but the interesting part is that
Maybe they'll want to put a
Washington-
train in after coming up here.
Yeah,
so
there we
often.
go. It's the train.
Back to Robbins train.
Like the Robbins
I'd
train.
love a train to Montpelier as long as Montpelier figures out how to design transit from Montpelier Junction up to National Life.
Well, hey, we just gotta get V-Trans. But it's, you know, the interesting part is that the similarities between climate, dealing with Portland and Washington, and here, as this last week with the rain, it's kind of like I'm going, well, it's, but the,
And I can go either way.
I mean, I was just re-looking at their past experiences and list of recent projects, and back at it, Tool's recent projects look great. Look like
Yeah.
they would be phenomenal, and they would bring a great outlook. And
That sounds like consensus.
sure,
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Tool?
Tool
So-
Tool
Framework.
framework.
Tool framework. Okay. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Moving on.
hey, In general, though, CCRPC selected 3 good ones.
Okay. Moving on to members updates.
Just quickly, the day after the last meeting of the planning commission, we had a workshop on the 12th, I think it was, with Future IQ and the steering committee to talk about the pillars for the strategic plan. Chris, we never got notes from that meeting as far as I know. So I can't remember what the 6, 7 pillars were. So I can't report what they were, but they're similar to what things you would expect: economic development, housing, et cetera, et cetera. The next 2 major events are an open house stroke community dinner, which Regina's trying to put together, I guess, with Jess on the budget so that we could have the community dinner where we have the various committees at the expo talking about what we do and the budget presentation to the community, and at the same time have the pillars being identified for the public and the public being able to give feedback. It's not clear if that's the way we're going to go. It was dependent upon whether the budget could be prepared quickly enough to move the meeting up, community meeting up. And then the second thing is focus groups, and those are all basically planned for the end of January. So a period of 3 days would be the open house community meeting and the focus groups. I think it's the 27th, 28th, 29th of January. That's all I know. We're having another meeting of the steering committee on the 22nd, but Ashley is supposed to convene another meeting before then for the steering committee to talk about mobilizing people for the focus groups in the open house. Holidays to sort of slow things down a bit.
I just had a question for Chris. So in my calendar, I have next Wednesday is the city council hearing on the rental registry. Is that still scheduled?
Oh, that is the 24th.
The 24th? Okay.
Yeah. That the conceptual, like originally we were trying to aim for the 10th, but yeah, we won't.
Okay.
10th is, so next week is going to be focused on the budget.
Okay. All right. Any other member updates? Moving on to staff updates.
Just a few things here. So there are 2 projects that's that fall under community development. That's that actually there are 3 things. So there's the rental registry, and as I said, we're gonna have a public hearing on the proposed ordinance on the 24th. The ordinance will be put online probably sometime next week. I'm putting together some information on that right now, but not that much has changed. I think City Council they provided some direction on a few tweaks. Like they didn't want an exemption for the nonprofit housing and things like that. You'll see the next version available soon. So there's also the Amtrak project and the Main Street Park project. Amtrak project is going to proceed to an RFQ for the 30% design phase. I have yet to put together that RFQ, but we'll be working on that over this month and trying to get qualified consultants on that. The Main Street Park project, due to some budget discussions and the fact that there's uncertainty over whether or not the Economic Development Fund, which would be used to fund it, would be renewed. It has been put on hold. Council does not think it is a high priority, and certainly does not think it is higher than Amtrak. So yeah, we will hear more about that after voters decide on things. Lastly, I've got a UPWP request. So this is a request for an update to the scoping study for Pearl Street between West Street Extension and Susie Wilson Road. This is to come up with a design that's a lower cost design. That's right now the preferred alternative is beyond what has ever been paid for out of VTrans's bike and pedestrian program. And it involves removing a center median and doing a whole replacing the whole sidewalk with an 8-foot shared use path and having buffered bike lanes. I think it should be possible to have something sooner that is, without having to move so many curbs and rip out a working sidewalk. So that's what this request is about. Council will be considering approving that request next Wednesday. That's it.
That's between West Street and Susie Wilson.
That's right. Yeah, West Street and Susie Wilson. That's right.
To make it bikeable.
Bikeable, but I also specifically put in to the scope consideration for trying to put in eastbound bus stops by reallocating space and maybe using temporary treatments like post barriers and maybe temporary bus platforms. But I see this as a major problem that buses fly past here with the doors closed. Yeah, that's
Flyby East would be coming into Essex Junction.
coming into Essex Junction. But basically, people who live here who might be working in Burlington do not have a way of getting home.
Yeah, no, I think there's a bus stop right at West Street Extension.
Yes, there is right here.
Right,
Yeah.
there's no buses from,
But in terms of Essex Junction, from Susie Wilson to West Street, it's just a railway. There's nothing.
On one side.
On one side.
one
On the other side are houses.
all,
Yeah.
all the houses are on the other side.
Yeah.
So means the buses,
So
and
you have
why they
to-
haven't done it is the buses would be going toward Essex Junction, flying down and feels like, okay. Well, actually the boulevard makes it less interstate. When it used to be 4 lanes like the side on the right, cars flew even faster than they fly now, believe it or not. But the buses that have no place to stop, there's no place for anybody to cross from what is the pillars for the fort,
Yep.
all the way down to West Street. There is no stop. There are people who try to get off at Susie Wilson Road so that they can get off and go to work. And I'll see people walking because the bus drivers actually said, okay, maybe I can stop. I'm serious.
Yeah.
And I've become a bus rider just for funs and giggles. But it also becomes even the other side too, is that we need to have bus transit. I mean, it's, I got off at Subway. I really wanted to get off at the next one. And it's like, okay, so you just walk. But yeah, there needs to be something there. I mean, there's no, even on Pearl Street, the first crosswalk is actually either at West Street or you have to go all the way down to McDonald's to get the next crosswalk.
That's outside of the scope, though.
But that's, okay.
Yeah.
But it's the going frame of mind is that there wasn't anything on the eastbound side of Pearl Street.
Are you saying there's more, as a result of more density of housing, there's need now for an additional bus stop?
Well, there is, for all the people who work along Susie Wilson and also all our residents who are, on the north side of the street, they have effectively no transit service because they only have one-way transit service. They can leave their house, but they can't go home, or vice versa. And adding, if we can establish 1 or 2 new eastbound bus stops, effectively we would be bringing like hundreds of people within walking distance of useful
Of
all-day
busy
frequent
Wilson Road.
transit.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my intention with this. That's all my updates.
All right. That's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Meeting adjourned 8:55 p.m.